Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country Homestead. God is good all the time. Today I want to show you how you can take a flat sheet or even a fitted sheet and recycle it, turning it into a nice tiered skirt, or what sometimes is called a frontier style skirt. This particular sheet, I've actually already started on it because I wasn't recording when I started this the first time, and I thought I was. So luckily I realized that before I got any farther along. But this sheet I got for 50 cents at a garage sale this last weekend. 50 cents, and it's a full-size sheet. I'm pretty sure this will be, even though I usually use queen or king for this kind of thing, I'm pretty sure for me this will be plenty of fabric. If you're on the bigger side, you may want to use a queen flat sheet or king, just depending on your size. Now, what I did was I tore off the casing part, or the top part of the sheet, because this little thing you can use, it's like a pre-made casing for either your drawstring or elastic, depending on what you're going to use it for. So what I do with this is I set it aside, and I'm going to be saving that for when I get to the end of the project. I have some 10-inch strips already ripped. And what you want to do is you want to test it first and make sure, because every now and then I've gotten some poorly made sheets where the grain in it was not lined up correctly, so that when I went to tear it, it tore at an angle. So you want to make sure first, do a test tear first, and see if it's going to rip in a straight line, and measure it down and make sure it's going to stay consistent in your measurement. Now for my strips, I like to do these in 10-inch increments. So I've got this marked here at 10, and what I do is I just keep going down, and then I just mark it at every 10 inches. Okay, so I'm going to mark it at 10. I'm going to mark it again here. And I'll go ahead and do the last couple. So then I go to each snip, and I just tear. This is a lot faster than cutting. So with each tier, you're going to be adding more fabric. For the top tier, I'm going to need half of one of these strips. We'll see when I get there. You want to wrap the strip that's going to be on top. I want it a little bit loose, just a little bit loose, not too loose. You want to make sure that it's going to be loose enough that it's going to fit. You're going to be able to at least pull it up over your hips. Some of this will depend on where you wear your skirts too. This part's probably going to sit right on my hips, since I'm going to be adding the waistband on. And I want it to have a little bit of gather, but not too much, because it's going to gather progressively more as I go down each tier, so the skirt will get wider and wider. Okay, so that's about where I want it, and it doesn't have to be exactly precise. In fact, I'm probably, just to be sure, I'm going to give myself a little bit extra. You'll want to make sure that you have enough for your seam. Okay, so that's what I'm going to start with. Then I'm going to take the next strip, and what I'll do is, I don't use pins, so bear with me. I don't have a ruffle maker. I do all mine by hand. And when I go to sew this together, I'm going to have this longer strip, and I'm just going to gather little bits at a time, and I'll show you that when I get to that, so you can see how much gathering I do. I've got this kind of down to a point where I know just how much gathering I want. Now how you do it's going to depend on how much gathering you want and how full you want your skirt. I like a very full skirt, but not too full. So when I went to load the clips that I had done so far, every now and then I'll get a clip that it does something a little bit weird and it won't properly load into the computer, and I try several times. So I'll sometimes lose whole clips and then have to start everything all over again. Well, I'm not going to do that with this. I just do want to go over some things. So when I first start putting the pieces together, what I do is I start with the top tier. The shortest piece is going to lay out flat on the bottom. Then the next tier is going to go on top when I start sewing. As I sew along, I just gather it like this. That might be too close. As I'm sewing, just the top layer. I'm just kind of folding it, and you can fold it either way. I usually try to fold it both ways, so it's like that. And that's how you're going to get the ruffle. And you're going to do that with each tier. Each tier will need to be progressively longer than the tier before it. This is the first time I've ever made one of these skirts with a full-size sheet, so obviously it's not as wide. It's not going to have as much length as a queen or a king. So I'm going to go ahead and add on. This is actually the piece that I cut off of the top tier. And this will give me more than enough to finish the second tier. Stitch that on there, and since I am going to go ahead and do this with the raw edges of the tiers facing out, I wanted to make sure this went that way rather than the other way. I just thought it would be kind of fun to try it that way myself, but I don't want the seams going down the side. I don't want those raw edges out. Just where the tiers connect. All right, so now you can see basically how, if you were going to do it with the raw edges on the inside, this is actually going to be the inside of the skirt instead of the outside. But if this was going to be the right side and you wanted your raw edges inside, this is how it's going to look. This is how your ruffle is going to look by the way I'm doing this. As she onward sped, I shook my head. I've been sewing since I was my own clothes, since I was 16, between 16 and 18. And I just made up my own patterns. In fact, the first pair of pants, I made myself a pair of pants out of an old skirt and didn't even have a pattern. And they worked out, it turned out pretty cute. And I had to just kind of guess what I was doing. All right, so I'm sitting here talking and I'm trying to figure out, okay, I want to make sure I get this sewn on the right side. It's kind of confusing because I'm so used to those raw edges being on the inside that this is weird. I've seen like the sweet Colleen that I met in the county down, and from Bantry Bay up to Derry Quay, and from Galway to Dublin town. No maid I've seen like the sweet Colleen that I met in the county down. So I'll show you what it looks like. Thankfully, since it is an around the house skirt, I don't need that top piece for the waistband. I'm going to fold this over and make a casing, and I like my skirts shorter for around the house. So by the time I get it hemmed and all put together, it's going to be about to there. And you can see it's shorter than the blue skirt that I have on, which is good because the blue skirt that I have on is too long still. In fact, you know, I'm still thinking about taking it up. I just haven't bothered with it yet. So roughly, once I get it all put together, it'll look something like this. So I still got to do the side seam, and then I'll fold this in. Since I'm leaving these raw edges out, I'll fold this in, and I'm making a drawstring waist. So what I'm doing right now is I'm doing the casing for my drawstring. Now, since I'm just doing a drawstring, I'm doing a rather small casing. So I got to fold it under once, just a nice small fold, and then I fold it over again. Now, I know the proper way to do this would be to measure all this out, fold it down, and then iron it real good, and then pin it. But I never do that. I never have. Well, I shouldn't say never. I do it when it's something really special and I want to make sure it's as perfect as can be, especially if it's for someone else. But again, this is just a skirt I'm wearing around the house, and I hate working with pins. If I don't have to work with them, I don't. So I just fold, and I just keep an eye on where this is lining up over here, or try to anyway. So I see my distance. It's just about to the end of the metal plate. And so I'm going to try to follow that. And then I know about the size of the hem turning under needs to be. Now typically I will start this stitch from the back side instead of from the front, but because I have the holes made for the drawstring, I started it from the front to make sure that I get it lined up correctly. And so I'm just going to sew around. So I've started sewing the hem. I'm not gonna film all this. I'm just gonna show you how I do the hem. And I know this is confusing. It's confusing me to see this and then see this, but this is the inside of the skirt, or the also known as the wrong side. See, I just kind of roll it and sew as I go. It's not really rolling. It's rolling. It's two little small folds. So one fold here, one fold here, and this part, as far as the sewing goes, takes the longest because I have to, it's a pretty long distance getting all the way around this. All right, so I have the skirt now finished. The only other thing I really need to do is wash it up and trim off some of the little thready pieces that are hanging here and there. So I have it on, and I'm gonna back up and show you what it looks like. And this is the same day. This is actually probably only a half an hour from the last clip that I had. So you can see it's very full. I got a lot of threads to trim off from where I was tearing it. But I'm very excited about this. I love these kind of skirts. And for around the house, this length is going to be perfect for me. So there you go. It only took me a few hours to whip this up, and you can do that too. Nothing but a 50-cent sheet and a few hours of time, and I've got myself another skirt for around the house. I hope you enjoyed the video and you learned something new, or at least got a tip on how to do something a little bit more frugal. And thanks for watching. Take care. God bless.